It began with an old Victorian house, inherited by Sarah after her grandmother's passing. The house stood on the outskirts of a quiet town, its chipped paint and creaking wood giving it an air of desolation. But what drew attention most was the attic, a place her family never spoke about. Upon arriving, Sarah's aunt warned her about the attic. She called it a place best left alone. Sarah dismissed this as mere superstition. Days passed, and Sarah's curiosity grew. One night, as a storm raged outside, she climbed the narrow staircase to the attic, the old wood groaning under her weight. The attic was cluttered with forgotten relics, cobwebbed trunks, faded photographs, and broken furniture. In the corner, bathed in the pale light of the moon, sat a porcelain doll. Its face was cracked, its eyes wide open as if frozen in a perpetual stare. A chill ran through Sarah, though she couldn't say why. She picked up the doll, its once vibrant dress now faded and torn. As she turned to leave, she thought she heard a faint giggle. She froze, straining her ears, but the attic was silent except for the steady drumming of rain on the roof. Over the next few nights, Sarah began to notice oddities. The doll, which she had placed on a shelf in the living room, would appear in different spots. On the dining table, the kitchen counter, even by her bed. At first, she assumed she had simply forgotten moving it. Then came the whispers, faint at first, like wind brushing past a window, but growing louder with each passing night. They seemed to echo from the attic, beckoning her to return. One evening, unable to bear it any longer, Sarah decided to get rid of the doll. She carried it to the fireplace and watched as the flames consumed its delicate porcelain features. But as the fire crackled and the doll disintegrated, the whispers turned into laughter, low and menacing. From the corner of her eye, Sarah saw a shadow move across the room. She turned, but there was nothing there. And yet, she knew she was not alone. The doll may have burned, but the attic was still waiting. The forest had always been a place of escape, a sanctuary where people could disconnect from the noise of the modern world. For Mike and his friends, it was the perfect destination for a weekend camping trip. The first day was idyllic. They set up tents, cooked over an open fire, and shared stories under a blanket of stars. But as night fell, the forest seemed to change. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a sense of unease. On the second morning, they found something strange near their campsite. A crude totem carved from wood, its surface etched with unfamiliar symbols. The totem looked freshly made, the wood still splintered and raw. They dismissed it as a prank, perhaps left by another camper. But the unease lingered. That night, as they sat around the fire, the sounds of the forest grew louder, branches snapping, leaves rustling, and a rhythmic crunch of footsteps. The footsteps circled their camp, slow and deliberate. They shone their flashlights into the trees, but the beams revealed nothing. Eventually, the sounds stopped, and they convinced themselves it was just an animal. By dawn, their nerves were frayed. They packed up and decided to leave. But as they made their way through the forest, they realized they were being followed. The presence was subtle at first, shadows flickering between the trees, faint whispers carried by the wind. Then they saw him, a figure standing at a distance, tall and gaunt, his face obscured by the shadows of the canopy. They quickened their pace, but no matter how fast they walked, the figure remained behind them, always keeping the same distance. When they finally stopped to catch their breath, they noticed something chilling. The ground around them was littered with wooden totems, identical to the one they had found at their campsite. The symbols carved into them seemed to shift, forming shapes that hurt to look at. Panic set in, and they ran. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees growing denser and the light dimmer. They stumbled upon an old cabin, its windows shattered and its walls covered in moss. Desperate, they barricaded themselves inside. The night was long and filled with terror. Outside, the footsteps grew louder, circling the cabin. The totems which they had left outside began to appear inside the room, one by one. By dawn, the figure was gone, but the totems remained. When they finally made it out of the forest, they swore never to speak of what had happened. But the memory of that figure, the man in the forest, haunted their dreams. Legends spoke of a cursed mirror locked in the abandoned manor at Bramble Hollow. It was said to reveal your darkest self and doom anyone who gazed into it. Most avoided the manor, but Amelia, a curious historian, couldn't resist. The manor was eerie, its decaying walls cloaked in silence. In the parlour, she found the mirror. Its ornate frame was tarnished and its glass cloudy. But as she stepped closer, her reflection froze, staring back with hollow eyes and a sinister smile. Whispers filled the room, growing louder as her reflection stepped out of the mirror. Paralyzed by terror, Amelia fled, the whispers following her into the night. Back home, her mirrors betrayed her. Her reflection smiled when she didn't, or stayed behind when she walked away. The whispers returned, calling her back to the manor. Desperate, Amelia grabbed a sledgehammer and returned. She shattered the mirror, but from every shard, twisted versions of herself crawled out, filling the room with malevolent laughter. The next morning, the manor was silent. The mirror was gone, and so was Amelia. But those who dare visit say they see her in the broken shards, waiting for someone to take her place. Some doors are better left unopened, some places better left unexplored. Yet curiosity has a way of drawing us toward the forbidden, no matter the cost. Some doors are better left unopened, some places better left unexplored. Yet curiosity has a way of drawing us toward the forbidden, no matter the cost. Which story chilled you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you crave more tales of terror, don't forget to subscribe. Remember, some stories are more than just fiction.